Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9. I'm Paul Kretschmer. Our subject today is the activities of the Slavic Gospel Association in places like Turkey and countries to the west and east of that area. My guest on today's broadcast is Eric Mock, Senior Vice President of Ministry Relations for the Slavic Gospel Association. In addition, he also maintains a life as a pastor in a local church here in the States. We spoke to him recently by phone from Turkey.
Through our service of churches in Ukraine, we really got to see kind of the eyes of the difficulty of this war between Russia and Ukraine, the invasion of Russia into Ukraine through the eyes of a child. And that's a completely different perspective.
I would imagine that because of the condition in that part of the world at the current time, that it's a bit of a challenge, both because Ukraine's under attack by Russia and because of what I understand is the Turkish government's leaning toward Islamic attitudes rather than the secular state that Ataturk began 100 years ago.
Well, that especially extends to Armenia, and part of what we do at SGA is we're serving and helping out in Armenia, and so we're seeing the pressure on Armenia when it comes to Turkey and Azerbaijan. And then relative to Ukraine, if I can spare a little aside, if I were to ask my grandchildren to draw me a picture, most of the time they'll draw me a picture of maybe a tree, a sun, birds in the sky, maybe their family holding hands, maybe the dog. We've got a little dog and they love that. And so it's usually a peaceful, joyful picture. And recently, one of the ladies who's one of our storytellers that gathers stories in the different ministries we support was sitting in church in Ukraine. And she looked over the pew in front of her, and there was a young boy who was drawing, just kind of fiddling during the sermon and drawing a picture. And his picture was a house, like any other house. Yet standing outside was himself, and next to him was a soldier with a gun pointed towards the sky, and missiles coming in. And so it was heart-wrenching to see that. As far as a child's concerned, normalcy for them is nightly rocket attacks and the need for the men in their lives to don military gear and protect them. And so where some kids would be thinking of peace and tranquility and in some degree, their idea of normalcy is air raid sirens and hiding in basements. And so the kids see vividly something that we see being older as maybe a transient thing or something to work through. But for them, it's actually, from their perspective, a way of life.
I understand that Slavic Gospel Association is going to be working this summer with camps for the young people in that part of the world. What would you like people to be aware of here in the States in terms of helping to support that initiative then, Eric?
Well, it's interesting. We talked about the growth of Islam and the persecution of the churches, and of course we see that in Central Asia, down along the border of Afghanistan, all the way over into other regions, including southern Russia as well. And then we have the war zones. We have the fighting that is occurring in Ukraine, and really there's even along the Russian border as well. The difficulty between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and even the difficulties in Israel, and the kids see an aspect of life that is really difficult. The brokenness of the family in those environments, the difficulties they face, the uncertainty they face, and then these summer camps are an oasis. The kids are drawn away from the dangers and the fears and the uncertainty, and they see something beautiful. They're surrounded by the people of God who display to them the love of God. They're usually in a peaceful setting, although I have to tell you some of the camps are actually done in bomb shelters. They're keeping people, the kids out of harm's way. But there's a sense of peace. There's a sense of a step away from the difficulties they face into a time where many of them understand a beautiful picture of who God is, the peace of God, the joy of God, the love of God, that they would not really experience and see any other way. In fact, a lot of these kids will share testimonies as they grow up of that summer camp being the point in which God brought them to faith in Him. And so these summer camps are just amazing. They're sweet times for these kids, and especially for the orphan children, to be away from the orphanage and to be in these summer camps with other kids, with other people that are loving on them, caring for them. Some of them wait all year for these summer camps because they're just a sweet time away. So it would be great for your listeners to see that the summer camps are not just a summer break when school's out, but for some of these people, some of these kids, it literally is a time away from the horror, the fear, the oppression, the difficulties that they face every day, into an environment that is filled with peace and love. And they hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. They hear that there's hope, and they hear about something that is the free gift of God's grace, and it's theirs. And they see it in the people, and they hear it in the words, and their lives are forever changed.
Are there any difficulties in sending aid from the United States to these activities in these various countries? I know Russia has a law about foreign agent registration, and I understand in the Republic of Georgia, for instance, to name just another one, the legislature there is on the verge or has passed a law that requires organizations that receive more than 20% of their aid from outside the country to register as a foreign agent.
Well, it's interesting, but one of the blessings at SGA is we work with the nationals. So we really don't have staff or organization or agency in those countries. We're working to support the nationals as God leads them. So in many ways, we avoid a lot of these different issues that are here. So when it comes to aid, we are helping these churches purchase aid in their local communities by working with a distributed network of churches, regardless of law changes, regardless of the difficulties we face in moving aid from the U.S. to them. We kind of circumvent those issues by helping them purchase goods locally, or during this continued war in Ukraine, we have helped via purchases in Poland as well to send over 24 million meals into the churches there. High accountability because we know where all the aid is going. High reportability. We hear stories of how the aid is being used to advance the gospel and people's lives are being changed. And then there's great ease in being able to serve them. And ultimately, that's not the goal. Ultimately, it is that you have a faithful local church that is preaching the gospel. And that local church is a church that God has raised up to reach these people.
I've been speaking with Eric Monk from SGA. He's a Senior Vice President of Ministry Relations for the association, this time directly from Turkey itself. Thank you amidst the nonstop activity that you and your wife and household live in this way that you have made time for us.
Well, it's always a pleasure for me to be able to share. And thank you to your listeners for taking a few minutes to hear about what God's doing through SGA.
You're welcome, Eric. Thank you, and God bless.
Blessings to you, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Once again, my guest on today's WIHS Journal has been Eric Mock, Senior Vice President of Ministry Relations for Slavic Gospel Association. We spoke to him by phone from where he was at that moment, which was in Turkey in the Middle East. For further information, you can call us at 860-346-1049, 860-346-1049, or office at WIHSradio.org, office at WIHSradio.org. Opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of the station. I'm Paul Kretschmer for the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 WIHS.